Welcome back, guys. So yes, once again, I am going to be talking about the Brawler 64 from Retro Fighter 64. So I've done 3 videos so far. This is the 4th. I did an unboxing, first impressions, another video where I did a teardown on the controller, inspecting the insides, looking at some of the possible issues people might be having. And then I just did another video where I kind of pointed out a few little minor issues that I came across that were bothering me. So those videos, not my most popular videos. Like to dislike ratio is, kind of out there. A lot of people, little emotional about the situation. A lot of people mad at me. Some people, are happy that I'm sharing these things. It's just my goal to be honest and to showcase my experiences with products and how I feel about them. Take that for what it's worth. I'm not out here to tell you buy something, don't buy something. I just want to give my honest impressions and thoughts. I'm not motivated to go up against any companies in particular, nothing like that. I'm just a very honest person. If something bothers me, my OCD is going to kick in and I'm going to point it out. It's just the way it is. So, like I said, I've had some issues with the controller. Overall, I like the way it feels. I love the analog stick. Even though it's not perfect, it's still a decent analog stick. If you sit there with this controller for an extended period of time, go back to an original Nintendo 64 controller, the feel is better on the Brawler 64. It might have some issues with the movement and whatever, but I think it's something you can adjust to and get accustomed to. A lot of people are pointing out the Z button, which I've not even really talked about. That you press it all the way down, and it's just supposed to be a digital button. And the way it's designed is more of a next generation, analog button, which is not really what it is. And so people do have some gripes and issues. Now, looking at something, this is what was sent to me today. This under control wired controller Nintendo 64. If you look at this, immediately it's going to look very familiar. Not 100% familiar, but very damn familiar, because this is essentially the same controller as the Brawler 64. Now, there's going to be a couple differences. Some of you who have the Retro Fighters controller in hand have one. You're going to notice analog stick and D-pad are swapped around. But everything else is the same placement, the same design. Nothing is moved around. It looks like everything is, the aspect of where everything is lined up is identical. Now, there's another difference as well. This controller does not have a controller pack port. The Retro Fighters controller does. So I'm not going to sit here and accuse anybody in particular on anything. This is all going to be speculation, but there's some interesting stuff to look at here. Now, the Kickstarter was in August of last year. If you check out their first controller that they did for the NES, which is an awesome controller, I'm not denying it. It is a sweet controller. You can peep it out on Castlemania Games. Buy one if you like. I think it's an awesome controller. It's been out for quite a while, and it's pretty sweet. It shares a similar aesthetic to the Brawler 64. Same grips and whatnot. D-pad is fairly similar. The turbo and clear buttons, same design. So once you look at this, look at the next gen Nintendo 64 controller, it's obvious, Retro Fighters, base the design around their original controller. Now, what I'm curious with is with this controller that, we kickstarted the Retro Fighters version in August. Now, when I look at this, there's a couple things you might think. Oh, these people are, ripping off Retro Fighters. They copied the Brawler 64 and just swapped the D-pad and analog around. Didn't put the controller pack on there, selling it for a lower price. Whatever. I would definitely hope that if this, was available and it didn't have the controller pack port, that it would be cheaper than the Retro Fighters version. But this kind of this intrigues me a little bit in that there's some evidence here that this controller has been available for a while now, at least since around the time the Kickstarter went up. Now, I'm sure somebody can figure this out. I can't figure it out from my normal means of trying to find when a website was published. I can't find when this particular page was published, but I'm sure somebody out there smarter than me can figure that out and see when this actual listing was put up so we can have a better idea. But the one thing I want to look at is when you go to the customer reviews, the first customer review was published August of last year. There's a couple others after that. Now, we didn't have access to the Retro Fighters version at this time. So who copied who? You know, I'm not accusing anyone because I understand how a lot of this works in China. You know, there'll be a mold or a specific thing and everybody's copying each other. Everybody's utilizing the same thing or the same designs and whatnot. But I find this peculiar that it's, minus those couple things that I said, everything else is identical. Even from what I'm being told, the internals, I don't have this controller in my hand, so I can't speak on my own personal experience with this because I do not have one. I don't intend on buying one. But from what I'm being told, the little issues with like the L and R button wobbling, when you press the L, the R button moves, and you push the R, the L button moves. Same thing with this, to a varying degree, like I mentioned in my previous video. But the one thing is that this controller, this version, does not have the issue of the analog stick touching here, because obviously the analog stick is down here. So what am I curious about? Why did Retro Fighters not go with this initial design? I'm holding my Retro Fighters controller in my hand and pretending with all my imagination that the analog stick is like how this one is. And to me, it feels fine. It seems like it would feel fine if the layout was kept that way. But my thought process is that maybe, just maybe, the Retro Fighters version was not designed this way because of the additional controller pack port being in the back here. Maybe there was not space, and maybe it had to be moved. When I look at the controller, it looks like they probably could have, but I don't know 100%. I'm just kind of thinking that that's a possibility, that it wasn't designed this way because it would have interfered with the placement of the controller pack port. So kind of interesting. I'll have the link to this in the description. You guys can come to your own conclusions on this. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything because I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, obviously this version has been out for quite some time for the NES, and it's the same aesthetic as this. So was this just retooled from this, or has this mold been available and people are just using it and changing button placement and stuff like that? But then when you look at this and you compare it to what we actually got, the actual controller, it's pretty much everything's same. Everything's the same minus the analog and D-pad and the controller pack port. So I find that interesting. Peep it out if you like. It is what it is. I'm hoping when Retro Fighters ships out the new version controllers that everything is legit and everybody's happy. That's all I could hope for. Retro Fighters is a good company. Don't get me wrong. They're passionate about what they do. You know, they manned up and owned, you know, the initial issue with the L stick and analog stick that not everybody cares about, but you know, a lot of people do. So I give them credit for that at least. But just kind of, my mind is kind of floating around on this one. Like I said, I don't want to say anything for sure because I don't know. But I appreciate you guys stopping in. I'm sure this video is going to be a hit. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't like what I showed here, if you don't like what I've talked about, you can go ahead and thumbs down. That's cool. If you appreciate what I'm doing, just being honest, that's what I do. Share my views, share my opinions, share what my experiences, and I have to be honest with that. So that's what we're doing here. Appreciate it, smash it, or dislike it, whatever you got to do. I appreciate it anyway. I will catch you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye. Boom.